So using a pair of tweezers, take a TLC plate out of the jar, and when you look at it, you'll see there's two sides to it, one of which is kind of dull, that's one with the silica on it. The other one is very shiny. The shiny side is not what we want to use, so put that face down. Now, take a pencil, and when you're touching the TLC plate, try to only touch the very top or the edges. Anyway, with a pencil, draw a line across the bottom of the TLC plate, maybe a centimeter and a half up from the bottom. And put a little dot anywhere you're going to put a spot, and label them with the substances that you're going to be putting on the TLC. For example, in the one in the video, in the middle I've got a spot labeled U for unknown. On the left I have ACE for acetaminophen, and on the right I've got ASP for aspirin. And these are references that will be available in the lab, and you have to make sure you do not contaminate the reference solutions. My unknown happens to be number 6, so I'm going to take the unknown, which is just a white solid, and dump all of it into a small Erlenmeyer flask. Then I'm going to dissolve the unknown in a mixture of, I believe it's toluene and ethanol, and you'll see that I think it says to add about 4 mils of the solvent, and it may or may not fully dissolve your unknown. That's okay. The majority of the solid will be dissolved. That's the main thing. Excuse me. And so once you have the solution of your unknown, you can take a capillary tube and spot it on the TLC plate. Now, the capillary tubes that you use for TLC are open on both ends, unlike the tubes you use for melting points. The melting point tubes, you by now should know, have one open end and one curved end that's closed off. So the TLCs are open on both ends. And the one thing you can do with the TLC capillary tubes is reuse them over and over again. You just need to sort of rinse them out. So in the video you can see right now there's solvent coming out of the capillary tube. And I've got a jar of, in this case, acetone that I'm using to clean it. And you just put the capillary tube in the acetone and then dip it on the paper towel. Do that a few times and it'll clean it out. So now I'm spotting the unknown. And see, it's fairly quick, the contact between the capillary tube and the TLC plate. You don't need to let it sit for a long period of time. But once you're done, you gotta, if you're going to reuse the capillary tube, you do need to wash it out a few times. So you can see I'm filling it up with acetone by dipping it in and then making contact with the paper towel until all of it's removed. So I put another spot on the TLC plate under the U, and this is just to see that later, at least hopefully, that spot, there will be nothing there. It should have just been solvent, no actual compound, but we'll test it later with a UV lamp. So now I've got the acetaminophen, and if you put your finger, you see what I did the first time is I had my finger on top of the capillary tube. That'll block the solvent or the solution from going in the tube. Sometimes you can use that as a way to limit, you just use like a pinpoint almost amount of solvent, but in this case nothing came up. So I had to spot it again to get the contact on the TLC plate. So we rinsed it out a few times. Now go to the aspirin. And just spot the aspirin on the TLC, and again you can see that there was no change. It looked like nothing came out, so just go back to the solution, make sure you get a little more, and then try it again, and you should see that bit of graying on the TLC plate. Now, it's a good idea to rinse out the capillary tube if you're going to reuse it, just so that when you do go use it again, you know it's already clean. Now what we want to do, after capping off the unknown, or sorry, the reference, get a UV lamp, check your spots, make sure that all 3 of them show up. And you can see that, in fact, they do. The TLC plate has a fluorescent indicator on it, and when there's a compound there, it'll block the light, and it shows up as purple. And you also will have seen there that under the U, there was no compound present, so the capillary tube, the cleaning was effective.